Okay, hello everyone and welcome back. I'm still here in lockdown in New Zealand. I hope that you're safe wherever you're watching. We're kicking off right now. So if this is the first time you're watching, my name is Greg. I've been an English teacher for the last 15 years. Most of that time I spent in South Korea, but I've been back in New Zealand where this webinar is being filmed for the last couple of years. During these last 2 years, I've spent a lot of time helping students prepare for the IELTS, and that's what I'm happy to be doing for you all today. This is webinar number 14. In this one, we're looking again at the same reading test. The last two webinars dealt with two previous sections of an academic reading test. Now, the reason we are focusing on an academic reading test is because basically any section of an academic IELTS reading test will be similar to section 3 of a general training IELTS reading test. So I know a lot of you are studying for academic, some of you are studying for general training. So I hope by focusing on this section that it's going to help both of you. So as you are watching, please feel free to ask any questions. You can do so on the GRAID Facebook page. I have my phone next to me, so hopefully I'll be able to see any questions that you have. What I want to do now is switch over to the GRAID site itself, not the GRAID Facebook page, but we're going to go straight to the GRAID page. And this is where you can practice for the test. Okay, what you're looking at now is the landing page or the dashboard for the GRAID website. So if you've seen the last two videos or the last two webinars, then you'll know that we were working on a reading test. So I go here, I click on tests, and hopefully you remember, but we did a reading section which was based on T. Last time on Friday, we did one which was based on artificial intelligence. Today, we're going to be looking at the topic of poverty, right? So all I do is I click on begin. So just to recap, with the test itself, obviously this is not an authentic test. This is a mock or practice test to help you prepare. But if you do practice on this site, you can set a time limit. Today, for the purposes of practice, we're not going to have a time limit, but in the actual test, you have 1 hour, right? So the difference is between the reading and the listening test is in the listening test, you get given an extra 10 minutes at the end to transfer your answers from the question paper to the answer sheet. Just remember, and I think this is so important, when you do the IELTS reading test, you need to fill out your answer sheet during the 1 hour. So that's really important. Don't be one of those poor students who don't realize that and spend the last 1 or 2 minutes frantically scribbling everything onto their answer sheet. So let's go to section 3. Okay, I'll let you read the title only, which we can see here. Okay, and also what you can see is the feature of the GRAID practice format or the GRAID practice test where we have a split screen. What I just did there is I just changed the ratio of the split so it's easier for me to read the text. Like with the second reading webinar, I'm going to imagine that it's towards the end of the test. Let's just say that we did section 1, section 2 in sequence, and we look at our watch and we realize we don't have a lot of time. So I thought this is another chance to show you how to deal with a time constraint where you don't have a lot of time to practice skimming or to do skimming in the test. Now, if you do want to know more about skimming skills, you can go to the GRAID Facebook page. You can also find it on YouTube. But I have released some videos which highlight the skills of skimming. When I go through this test, we're going to be focusing more on scanning. Scanning is a really important reading skill for the IELTS test. I would even say it's the most important. And again, to reiterate what I said last time, you're not really reading, you're just looking for information. It may be the same word or phrase, or it could be a synonym or another phrase with the same meaning. But what I would do is I would preview the types of questions that we have. So we can see here, we have some multiple choice questions. Now, straight away, if I, imagining I'm under time constraints, I don't have a lot of time, I would absolutely leave these multiple choice questions until the end. And I'll tell you, this is for a practical reason. If you do run out of time, you can always guess them. Obviously, we don't want to take that approach that we're going to guess in the IELTS test, but worst case scenario, you are running out of time. There are only 3 options, so you have a 1 in 3 chance of being correct. So we're going to skip over the multiple choice, and we're just going to see what other types of questions we have. So same as last time, and this is a very common question type. We have fill in the blanks. Well, actually, it's not fill in the blanks in this case, but it is offer an answer which is no more than 3 words. And again, it says from the text, right? So from the text, that means the words that I use to answer these questions, these question answer, the words that I use to answer these questions must be exactly how they are shown in the text. So we have multiple choice, we have question and answer with no more than 3 words. And we also have a different type of question down here, one that we've done before. This is basically matching the sentences, right? So click on the sentence to select a possible ending. Now, what I would do here is, I think it's a bit of trial and error. We could start with these ones here, the question and answer, or we could start with the sentence endings. Personally, I would probably go for the question and answers. Perhaps it's more likely that these might be in the same sequence as the reading. Sometimes the question answers are out of sequence. So essentially we're just trying to, well, what you could do is you could try question 32, and if the answer is right down the bottom of the reading text, then obviously that's not going to be in sequence. So let's try it though, right? So here we're just going to jump straight into the question. What do people with physical and mental well-being usually have access to, right? So again, I'm going to try highlight some words here, which I think are easy to isolate in the reading, right? So we know that this reading is about poverty. Now, physical and mental well-being, maybe those terms might appear throughout the reading, but obviously, as we first start answering questions, it's going to be harder to find things because we're less familiar with the reading, but let's just jump straight into it. So what I want you to do is possibly scan for physical and mental well-being. Another word you might want to keep in the back of your mind is access. So I'm going to let you scan and I'll give you some time. If you can't finish finding it in the time I give you, if you need more time, you can always send me a message, but I just want to, imagine that this is a test and try and have some sort of test conditions. So hopefully you finished scanning over the first paragraph. Again, remember, you're not reading the first paragraph, you were just looking for these keywords, right? So physical, mental well-being, or synonyms, right? So for example, physical, maybe we might find the word body, right? Mental, we might find the word mind, but I can't see anything in that first paragraph. So I scan over the second paragraph. Now I do see well-being, right here. So I look a little bit further, I read a bit further around that word, and in the sentence beginning, however, these high-level discussions will be useless unless our measures of societal progress expand to specifically include what nature does for human well-being, right? So, and prosperity, especially for poor people. So it doesn't really tell us about physical and mental well-being. So I just check a little bit further. And then in the third paragraph, I can find that exact phrase. All right, so around just here, hopefully you can see my highlighting. And I'll read out that sentence beginning there. So again, when you find what you think are the keywords in the text, just do it step by step, read that one sentence, and hopefully that sentence will have an answer for you. So there is also a clear relationship with both physical and mental well-being, especially for those who are fortunate enough to have access to green spaces. Now, we had access in the back of our mind, and this is an easier question, to be honest, because it's not really paraphrased extensively. And what do they have access to? Green spaces. Now, don't do what I did last time and type in the wrong word, because it'll be marked incorrect, and it will definitely be wrong on your test paper as well. So just be careful to make sure we're typing in, or you type in, the right answers. So green spaces, I'm satisfied with that. And also this answer was near the top of the text. So I also think, probably these question answer questions are going to be in the sequence of the reading. So that's a good thing. Let's go to the next one, 33. And we're asked, what is nature often converted into when it is valued, right? So now we already know a little bit about this reading, and we've seen paragraph 1, paragraph 2, they were talking about nature. So even paragraph 3 begins with the word nature. So hopefully this answer is nearby. So converted. Now, I'm going to look for the word converted. In the back of my mind, I'm also going to look for valued. Converted, I also think synonyms might be changed, right? So let's have a look, and I'll give you a chance to scan. So I would be scanning from here, from beyond. Now, hopefully that's enough time for you to see that, well, I couldn't find anything that's related to converted or conversion or something being valued. So then I just go through to the next paragraph. We have a heading here, and it talks about the problem with economic indicators. So economics, value, to me, this tells me that it's absolutely possible that our answer could be under this heading, right? So okay, I'll give you a bit more time to scan at home. So again, if you can't find it in the paragraphs, you just have to keep scanning ahead. Have a look in this paragraph, beginning research. I think, again, the important thing is just don't panic, right? It's a long reading and we're not familiar with it yet. So we don't really know where the answer could be, but we're just looking anything like converted, maybe a different part of speech, conversion, as I said before. In the back of our mind, maybe the word valued. And hopefully at home, you're able to see this. So we can see nature and nature here, and then we have the word converted, right? So I'll read the sentence out beginning even. Even if nature is valued. So straight away, this tells me that this must hold the answer. It is typically converted into money equivalents, right? So what is nature often converted into when it is valued? And here we're going to answer money equivalents. Okay, now I think I might have actually skipped over a question before as well. And I did. Okay, that's okay. So it doesn't matter if we've jumped ahead. So we can do number 31. Now, because we did skip ahead, then I would expect that the answer is going to be closer to the top of the reading. But food and clean air. Hopefully, those should pop out to us. Now, obviously, food and clean air are related to nature. So therefore, I think the answer will be towards the top because that was talking about nature. So I'll see if you can find food and clean air. Remember, you're not reading, you're just trying to look for the keywords food and clean air. Okay, hopefully at home, if you're very fast at scanning, then you are able to see food, clean air, right? Well, actually food, clean air, and water. Now, again, this concept of scanning, this scanning skills are really important. This is where you don't just need to practice reading IELTS. You could really practice reading anything, but practicing trying to find information by scanning is, I think, the most important skill that you need to develop. The faster you are at finding information by scanning, the more time you're going to have to focus on comprehension and actually answering the questions in the test. But to answer this question, let's have a look at the whole sentence. And it begins, it obviously provides us with the basic needs such as, right? So now, such as is a phrase used to introduce examples. So what are they examples of? They are examples of basic needs, right? So basic needs such as, right? So such as food and clean air, right? So they are examples of basic needs. So sorry to skip ahead over that one before, but hopefully from earlier, you do remember that we have 3 types of questions. Now, we're going to leave multiple choice into the end. In case we run out of time, we can always guess those. Now we have the sentence matching. Now, with these questions, we hope that they are given in the same order as the reading, but not always. So again, this is where if they are out of order, you're really going to have to scan hard. But because we have answered questions 31, 32, 33, hopefully you're feeling a little more familiar with the reading. And so this is basically why if you're running out of time, you can just jump straight into the reading. And by answering the questions, you're actually kind of doing skimming in a way. You're becoming more familiar with it so that as you progress through the other questions, hopefully they'll be easier for you. So just to confirm the instructions, complete each sentence with the correct ending from the options provided. Click on the sentence to select a possible ending, right? So this is where, if you're not sure, you can always use grammar to narrow down which ones are possible, which ones are not possible. But again, we're going to be focusing on scanning. So I would be looking for here political events, right? So that's, I think, might be hopefully easy to find. Now, I don't think it's going to be in this first part of the reading because that seemed to talk more about nature. So let's have a look further down the reading. We have a heading here with economic indicators, right? So to me, it seems more likely that the political events might be under that heading. Let's have a look. Okay, so I'm going to leave that heading up the top. Let's see if I'm right. Let's see if it's going to be under this heading, the problem with economic indicators. So again, I'd be scanning for anything about political events, maybe even Europe and USA or Europe and the US might be easy to identify. As I look over this now, as I scan over it, I can't see Europe and the US. So I'm just going to scroll down. And definitely Europe and the US were the right words to be scanning for, because hopefully at home you saw these two words just popped out to me off the page, right? So let's read that whole sentence beginning the. So the consequences of neglecting people's varied views and aspirations have become apparent from the recent political events in Europe and the US. So obviously that holds the answer. Now, what I haven't done is I haven't looked at all of the sentence endings. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to comprehend the question first. So political events in Europe and the US suggest that. Now, I guess that it's going to be something to do with neglecting people's views and aspirations, right? Let's have a look. Okay, hopefully this is not all of the answers, but this one pops out to me straight away. People's different views and hopes have been ignored, right? People's different views and hopes have been ignored. So I go back to here, and views and aspirations. Aspiration is the same meaning as hope, so I'm going to lock that in. So I'm very confident that's the answer. Now, perhaps later, as I look at the other options, another answer might pop up to me later, but at this point in time, I'm sure that is the answer. And I'm also worried about the time limit, so I'm just going to go for that. Okay. So let's move on to 35. So the monetization of nature. So monetization, again, just to give me a ballpark place to scan through, I think monetization, that means to express things in money terms. This is probably going to be under this heading. So I'm just limiting where I'm going to scan. Now, I might even look for the word monetization. Hopefully I can find that. So from the top, I'll let you see if you can find anything about monetization. You might also be thinking about different words which are related to that, perhaps money. Okay, I'm going to scroll down. Now, for me, my scanning has brought me up to this one. If you're a little slower than me, well, that's to be expected. But I'm up to this stage now, and I'm going to keep scanning. I can't see anything here related to money or using an expression which is closely related to money. But I do remember from a previous question the use of the term money equivalence. Now, so I think this might hold the answer. So again, all I do is I just read that whole sentence. So even if nature is valued, it is typically converted into money equivalents, right? So when we change something into money equivalents, that means it's monetized, right? And this favors those who are able and willing to parcel out nature into small commoditized bundles, which can then be sold to the highest bidder. So, it seems like it's not telling us anything about what monetization takes into account or doesn't take into account. So at this point, I would read on, right? Because I can't really answer that question, or I can't guess what the answer is. So I read on, and it says, this fails to take into account. Maybe you even scanned and you saw that. So here is going to be our answer, right? So we're told to complete this part of the sentence. The monetization of nature doesn't take into account. So this fails to means doesn't. Take into account the views of those who believe nature matters in other ways or on its own right, who care about the beauty of nature and the sheer joy that it provides to many. Now, I mentioned this last time, you're going to have questions which are harder and easier. This, for me, is one of the hardest questions because it's forcing us to do a lot of reading, a lot of comprehension. Let's see how well we have comprehended this. So it doesn't say anything about instrumental roles, nothing about the UN. It did mention the highest bidder, but it's not saying that monetization of nature doesn't take into account the highest bidder. Grammatically, that's possible, but as I scroll down, this one here seems to have the same meaning, right? So the monetization of nature doesn't take into account the views of those who care about the beauty of nature. So as I go back, and it's almost word for word, right? So again, we're asked to read more, but we're rewarded by finding the same phrase, and I'm sure that's the answer. Now, 36, it is particularly the poor that are being failed by, right? So I think the word I'm going to scan for is poor, right? So I'm going to scan for the word poor. And again, poor to me seems it's more likely to be under the heading, the problem with economic indicators. So I'm going to give you a chance at home. See if you can scan for the word poor, or maybe poverty, perhaps, right? So, but the poor means those who are poor. Again, it might be paraphrased as something like poverty or impoverished, but let's see if we can find anything about being poor. So I can see the word rich, but that's about becoming rich. It's not about being poor. Okay, now I see here though, I can see the word poor. Now, I'm not going to skip over that. I'm going to check to see if this has the answer in the sentence. So, and even I see poverty, right? So at this stage, because it's a short paragraph, I'd probably just read the whole paragraph. So I'm going to read that whole paragraph. Research suggests that failing to consider these missing environmental aspects can result in an incomplete assessment of the multiple dimensions and underlying drivers of poverty, right? So poverty, if you're not sure, means to be poor. Consequently, the identification of the poor, as well as an understanding of what makes them poor, risks being partial, therefore posing a challenge to addressing poverty adequately, right? So does it really tell us that the poor have been failed? We can check. Now, there are other options down the bottom. Now, some of you might be looking at the keyword poverty. That doesn't make sense though, right? So they have been failed by address poverty. Grammatically, that's not possible. So that's what I mean by using grammar to help guide you. Now, to me, there's no answer which clearly seems to fit at the moment. So I'm going to have to scan further and see if there's another mention of poor. So just review what we're looking at. It is particularly the poor that have been failed by, right? To me, the answer did not lie in that paragraph. But if I read on, and unfortunately, I didn't see that the first time, but that's going to happen. So then I realized straight away, when I read on, the current status quo fails people, especially the poor, right? So perhaps at home you saw that before me. So then I go back and I remember one of the options was the status quo. But what I'm trying to show you though is not really just to keep scanning and hope that you find the answer. I'm trying to show you a process which is methodical so that you don't miss anything. So to me, it was possible that the answer was in that paragraph. It wasn't. When I read on, I found it quickly. So it's just a step-by-step methodical way of scanning. So high-level discussions took place at now high-level discussions. Now this is where, as I've progressed through this reading, I'm more familiar with it. And I do remember there was a mention of the UN right at the top of the reading, right? So I do have a reasonably good memory. So this is where I'm going to have a little, I'm going to actually breaking my method, but I'm thinking this is more of a hunch, right? So this seems like it could be the answer. So because I remembered seeing UN, so I'm just going to check this. And if it's wrong, then I'll scan for maybe a word like discussions. But here I find UN. Another reason why I'm just going to look straight away is because UN is easy to scan for, right? It's an easy word to find. So a major UN environmental meeting, and then I realized meeting, really it's a very similar meaning to discussions, recently looked at launching an assessment of the different values that people attribute to nature. So where did these discussions take place? Well, hopefully there's an option for the UN. And I do remember that being an option. I'm almost certain that's the answer. Then I just click the UN. Then I go on to 38. Okay, the loss of habitat and wild species can be caused by. So I think this is more likely to be at the top because now I'm more familiar with this reading. The first part of the reading tends to deal more with nature. The second half is talking more about economics. So I'm going to scan for habitat and wild species, right? Hopefully they'll be easy words to find. Now, my guess was wrong because I've looked through here, and although I think it's a good guess that that information is going to be in the top part of the reading, it's not from what I can see, right? So that means, well, it must be under the heading, the problem with economic indicators. So we're just going to keep scanning. Now, again, I still think habitat and wild species are the easiest words to scan for. So let's have a look in this paragraph. Can't see those words here, but when I go to the second paragraph, I can see them towards the bottom. So again, I am using some kind of logic. I thought habitat and wild species are more likely to be in the first part of the reading, but they aren't. But we were able to find them pretty quickly later. So let's read this whole sentence. A country could get rich by cutting down all its primary forests, and many have, but the associated loss of habitat and wild species would not feature in national accounts. So we're asked here, what is the loss of habitat and wild species caused by? Now, when we go back to the sentence, it seems quite clear that the loss of habitat and wild species is caused by cutting down forests, right? So that's what's causing the loss of habitat and wild species. Then we go to the sentence ending, and hopefully it's going to have something about forests. So clearing means to cut down forests, right? Yes, perhaps if you don't know what clearing means, you might just have to make a guess, but hopefully you understand that clearing means to cut down forests. We're going to have a look at some of the vocabulary that we've covered at the end of this practice, but let's click this and we'll go on to 39. Okay, gross domestic product. To me, this is an easier question because that's an easy word to find, and it's staring right in front of me. So gross domestic product. Now, unfortunately, the hard part is here that we can't really guess the rest of the answer. So gross domestic product figures, right? So what I would do at this stage is I would actually look at the different options just to sort of narrow it down. So this has nothing to do with gross domestic product. That doesn't make sense. So let's scroll further down. Now, again, what I'm doing here is because I don't have enough information in the first half of the sentence, I'm seeing if I can make a prediction. So gross domestic product figures protection, grammatically that's not possible. Address poverty, do gross domestic product figures address poverty? My common sense tells me that's not a possible answer. Now, I think this is the answer. So I've made a prediction. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to check my prediction in the reading. So just another strategy you can use. If you don't have a lot of information, right? So this first half of the sentence, there's not a lot of information, then you can make a prediction, right? To narrow down what you're looking for. So just to show you again, I believe the answer is don't reveal the role of nature in society, right? Okay, so reading from here, gross domestic product has been the most prominent approach since the end of World War II, with GDP seen as a useful snapshot of the state of the economy and people's well-being. Haven't found the answer yet, but I'm going to keep reading. What these figures often hide are those things like the role of nature. So there we have it. We've confirmed that our prediction was correct, and we can happily select that. And we're on to the last one of these sentence matching. So nature offers us, again, this is one where we're not given much information at the start of the sentence. So I would make a prediction again. So nature offers us clearing forests. We've already done that. Instrumental roles doesn't seem to make sense. Nature offers us, must be something, right? So let's have a look. Is there something down the end? Nature offers us protection from environmental dangers. So that seems to me like a good prediction. So we're going to check that prediction. So what I might even do here is, instead of scanning for nature, which is, the word nature is going to be used many times, I'm going to scan for the expression or the term environmental dangers. And I'm going to go back up to the top. Okay, I have found the word environmental, and after there I can see the word hazards, which is a synonym for dangers, and I'm reading back. So I go to the start and it says it. It obviously provides us basic needs. Now, straight away, I wonder what it is. So I read back further. It is nature. So then I can say nature obviously provides us with the basic needs such as food, clean air and water, as well as protection from environmental hazards. So again, another example where making a prediction can save you time. Now, I'm not going to guess the multiple choice questions, but if I was sitting the test and I had run out of time, I would have a 1 in 3 chance if I guessed. But let's answer these questions correctly. And also another reason why you can leave these until the end is now we have a better idea. So people who benefit from environmental destruction are usually, well, we know they're not poor because we've already covered a question which dealt with that. My guess straight away is rich. But again, why don't we see if we can confirm the answer? Now, we were just looking at environmental hazards, but let's see if we can find the word environmental. Now, doesn't seem to be in the first part. Again, I am scanning for the word environmental. Take you down to this header. Again, I'm not reading. All I'm doing is I'm looking for the word environmental. And I can actually see it right here. Now, environmental destruction, the same 2 words which are used in the question. So those who benefit from the current approaches are typically global elites, right? So elites, this means people in society who are very rich, who are very powerful, right? So definitely that's the right answer. Gross domestic product. Now, I'm going to make a quick prediction here because there isn't a lot to read. And what I can also do is I can just try and remember what I've read. So it takes into account the role of nature. Well, we were told that it doesn't, right? So was used during the Second World War. Well, if you already know the answer and you don't have to read, if you know that gross domestic product is an economic indicator, just answer it, right? So I'm sure that's the answer. I'm willing to place a wager on that. So GDP measures. Now, this is another tactic I want to explain. You can make yourself a question and forget about the options sometimes. In this case, we can ask ourselves the question, what does GDP measure, right? So what does GDP measure? And then I'm going to be scanning for the word measure, right? So we've found GDP here, right? Okay, so then I look further down and I find a different part of speech, which here measured has been used as an adjective, but measured GDP might actually increase as a consequence of a major environmental disaster because of the economic activity created by the cleanup and repair. So this means that if there is an environmental disaster, that countries spend a lot of money to fix the problem, basically. Imagine there's an oil spill that costs a lot of money to clean up. So that has the same meaning as the activity taken to attend to environmental disasters. Let's check that we finished everything. Again, if I have made spelling mistakes, I will find out shortly, but I think those are all right. Just want to make sure I haven't missed anything. And then I click finish. And it looks like, yay, we're all green, right? So just wanted to go over some of the keywords that we looked at today. So I'm going to go to the whiteboard. Okay, so I'm going to clear this. Okay, so again, obviously when you're doing the reading, it can be quite overwhelming dealing with all this different vocabulary. So what I would suggest, one way to sort of put a limit on how much vocabulary you're going to try learn from practicing reading is just to focus on some of the words which are in the questions themselves. Otherwise, what I've seen in the past is that students never practice reading. They don't practice skimming and scanning skills. Reading for them just becomes an acquisition of vocabulary. That's what you don't want. You do need desperately, I think, to practice particularly scanning, right? So we've seen how important that is. So don't become overwhelmed by all the vocabulary. Make sure you're practicing your reading skills and just put a limit on how many words you're going to try learn from doing an IELTS reading. And again, you can do that by just focusing on some of the keywords in the questions themselves. These are some of the words which I thought would be useful. So measures, which is a noun, right? So I'm going to put noun next to that so you know what it is. We had indicators. Right, I'm just writing the words or the vocabulary as they were used, right? There's another noun, a plural noun. Now, we had a collocation there. We had economic indicators. Whoops, that's not how you spell economic. Make this a little bigger so it's going to fit in one line. Okay, and another one I thought that was a keyword and could be useful is habitat and sustainable. So if I were to pick out a few keywords, these would be them. The reason I would recommend learning these words is because they're more general, right? So you don't want to just study the topic specific words. These are the type of words which you could encounter in other IELTS reading tests, right? Sustainable is an adjective, by the way. So, and habitat is also a noun, right? So now, previously I showed you a wonderful dictionary which you can use if you're not sure about the definitions. So I'm going to bring that up again. It's learnersdictionary.com. Hopefully you can see that on your screen. Actually, I'll need to share it with you, won't I? So where are we? Okay, hopefully you can see that now. Now, if you weren't sure what a habitat is, for example, I type that in. And the reason I recommend this dictionary, it does use American spelling, but you're going to get given the International Phonetic Alphabet pronunciation. And if you really want, you can listen to the pronunciation, but the definitions are really simplified, right? So a habitat, the place or type of place where a plant or animal naturally or normally lives or grows. And it will give you some example phrases. So absolutely a great dictionary for anyone who's learning. So we go back to the whiteboard. So These 4 words, I think, are the words which are more general, which you might come across in other IELTS tests. So also what I've done here is I've given you another example of a collocation. I'll write that down for you if you're not sure what a collocation is. If you hear me say this word and you don't know what it is, I'll write it for you. Let's just change the color just so that you realize it's not a vocabulary item. So this is another keyword, collocation. And I'll show you again the collocation dictionary site. Where are we? Okay, so let's type in indicator. Now, I haven't checked this one before, but I guess if indicator is in the collocation dictionary, we should be able to find it. And I'm going to bring up the collocation dictionary for you in a second. Okay, let's search for indicator. Right, and here we go, economic. Right, so not every word is in this collocation dictionary, but it's going to show you a lot of useful collocations. Most IELTS students that I've tutored, naturally they have a good range of collocations, but if you want a tool that's helpful for you to build more, again, another great website that I recommend. So let's go back to those words and just review them once more. So another thing that you can do, I'm going to get rid of that, is another great way to learn vocabulary. We have the word sustainable here. So what am I doing? Okay. Now you can learn word families, right? So sustainable is an adjective, as I told you. Do you know the noun form of this? And if you don't, I'll write it for you. So it's sustainability, right? And there we go, there's the noun form. And we also have the verb, sustain. Right, so when you are reviewing vocabulary, if you are going to pick out some words that you're not sure about or you think are going to help you in the future, also consider the different forms. Now, this is where I think the Learner's Dictionary comes in useful as well. So we'll go back to that. Where are we? Okay, so if I were to type in sustainable, now it tells us the adjective form, but when we scroll down, it'll also give us the different parts of speech. So really useful, very easy to find. So another reason I recommend this website, this Learner Dictionary, is because it's not cluttered. It doesn't have too many entries and too many examples. So it's easy for you to see down here, noun, and sustainably, I didn't even add that to the list of different parts of speech. I'll do that now. So what have we got? So sustainably. So there's the adverb as well. So you can use that dictionary to teach yourself different parts of speech. This is called a word family, right? So from sustainable, we have sustainability, we have sustain and sustainably, right? So what's going to happen, I'm going to clear all this for starters so I can show you. On Tuesday, so the webinars are always, let's put it in black. The webinars are held on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. So I know so many of you are watching from India, so I just always list the Indian time first. Just as a reference, that is 8 p.m. New Zealand time. So this week, well, I know this is the start of the week already, but the rest of the week, for the next 3 webinars, Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, we're going to switch over to listening. Now, I know I've had some requests about listening. It's good to finally be onto the listening tests. As a review, we've done writing task 2. We did a lot of those. We've now looked at some listening tests, some reading tests. So coming up, we're going to be looking at some listening tests. To do that, I'm also going to take you through the GRAID website. So always really nice to reach out to some students and help you in these strange days. Really hope you're really safe, and I hope you're making good progress with your IELTS. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you on Tuesday.